this episode, we're going to treat monitoring as part of security architecture rather than as an add-on that someone installs after systems are already running. Beginners often think monitoring is just collecting logs, but logs by themselves do not create safety, and they certainly do not create speed during an incident. What matters is whether monitoring is designed to answer urgent questions quickly, such as what is happening, where it is happening, how far it has spread, and what you can safely contain without breaking critical services. This is what we mean by fast triage and containment. Triage is rapid understanding and prioritization, while containment is limiting damage and stopping spread. A monitoring architecture that supports those goals must be intentional about what data is collected, how it is organized, how it is protected, and how it is turned into actionable signals. It must also be reliable under stress, because monitoring systems are often needed most precisely when the environment is unstable. The goal today is to build a clear, beginner-friendly picture of what a good monitoring architecture looks like and why it is essential for security outcomes. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A strong place to start is understanding what infrastructure monitoring means in the context of security, because the word infrastructure can include many layers. Infrastructure monitoring includes visibility into networks, hosts, identity systems, cloud control planes, storage services, and the platforms that run applications. It is not the same as application monitoring, which focuses on user experience and business logic, though the two should connect. Infrastructure monitoring is about the health and behavior of the systems that make everything else possible, and many attacks leave their earliest and clearest signals in infrastructure layers. For example, privilege changes, new network routes, unusual authentication attempts, and unexpected system processes often appear before data theft is obvious. Beginners sometimes assume that security monitoring is only about detecting malware, but modern incidents often involve credential abuse and configuration changes, which are infrastructure events. Monitoring architecture must therefore collect both technical telemetry and administrative activity records, because attackers can cause major harm without deploying obvious malware. When infrastructure monitoring is well designed, it provides the raw material for defenders to see patterns and make containment decisions confidently. When it is poorly designed, defenders either drown in noise or face dangerous blind spots. Fast triage depends on having the right signals available quickly, and that begins with choosing what to collect based on what questions you need to answer during incidents. During an investigation, you often need to know which identity performed an action, which system was affected, what the system communicated with, and whether similar actions occurred elsewhere. That means you need identity logs, such as authentication successes and failures, token issuance events, and privilege changes. You need network visibility, such as connections between systems and unusual outbound traffic patterns. You need host visibility, such as process creation, service changes, and configuration modifications, especially on high-value systems. You also need cloud administrative logs when cloud services are involved, because many serious incidents involve actions like creating new access keys, changing storage sharing settings, or altering network security rules. A beginner mistake is to collect everything possible without a plan, which creates enormous cost and noise, and another beginner mistake is to collect only basic system logs, which can miss the events that matter most. A durable architecture defines a core set of telemetry that is always collected and a secondary set that can be added for specific systems and risks. The goal is to collect data that supports decisions, not just data that exists. Speed also depends on organizing monitoring, so that defenders can pivot from one piece of evidence to the next without starting over each time. If logs are scattered across many systems with different formats and different time references, triage becomes slow and error-prone. A good architecture centralizes security-relevant telemetry into a place where it can be searched and correlated, but centralization is not only a storage problem, it is a consistency problem. Logs need consistent timestamps, consistent identity fields, and consistent asset naming so that events from different sources can be connected. This is why time synchronization matters for monitoring. Because if different systems disagree about time, correlations become confusing and containment decisions become delayed. Beginners sometimes underestimate how much triage depends on consistent naming, such as stable host identifiers and stable user identifiers. But these details determine whether you can quickly answer questions like whether two events happened on the same system or by the same identity. A monitoring architecture that supports fast triage includes normalization, which means mapping diverse log formats into a consistent structure so searches and alerts can be reliable. It also includes index and retention planning so that recent high-value data is easily searchable and older data remains available for deeper investigations. Organization is what turns raw telemetry into an environment you can reason about quickly. Containment requires that monitoring is connected to the ability to act, and that connection must be planned so that response actions are safe and appropriate. During incidents, you may need to isolate a host, block a suspicious connection, disable an account, revoke tokens, or restrict access to a storage repository. Monitoring helps by providing the evidence that those actions are necessary and by identifying the scope of impact so you do not overreact or underreact. A common beginner misunderstanding is to think containment is simply turning things off, but in real environments, containment can break business operations if it is not selective. A good monitoring architecture supports selective containment by giving you enough context to target actions, such as knowing which systems communicated with a suspicious destination or which accounts performed unusual administrative changes. It also supports confirmation, meaning after containment you can observe whether suspicious activity stops and whether it resumes elsewhere. The architecture should therefore include feedback loops between detection and response, so actions produce observable signals and defenders can measure effectiveness. Containment decisions are safest when they are informed by evidence and validated by observation, not by guesswork. Monitoring is the system that makes that evidence and observation possible. Another key requirement for fast triage is prioritization, because not every alert deserves the same urgency, and noisy monitoring can cause teams to miss what matters. Prioritization begins with the idea that some assets and some identities are more sensitive than others, which means their signals should be treated with higher severity. Administrative accounts, identity systems, management planes, and repositories of sensitive data are high-value targets, so unusual events involving them should rise quickly. Monitoring architecture should therefore include asset context, meaning it knows which systems are critical, which networks are management zones, and which data stores contain sensitive information. Without context, an alert about a login might be meaningless, because you cannot tell whether it is a harmless user mistake or a high-risk attempt against an administrative portal. Beginners often assume alerts can be judged based on technical details alone, but severity depends heavily on business and architectural context. A durable design includes tagging and classification of systems and accounts, so that detection logic can incorporate importance automatically. It also includes clear escalation paths so that high-impact alerts are seen quickly and acted upon consistently. When prioritization is built into architecture, triage becomes faster because the system helps focus attention where it matters most. Infrastructure monitoring must also be resilient, because attackers and failures often target monitoring systems themselves or disrupt the systems that produce telemetry. If monitoring depends on a single collection point, and that point fails, you lose visibility precisely when you need it. If attackers can alter logs on a compromised host before logs are collected, you may lose evidence and be misled. A robust architecture, therefore, includes secure log transport and secure storage, ensuring that once logs are collected, they cannot be altered easily. It also includes redundancy and buffering, so that if connectivity is temporarily lost, logs can be forwarded later without being dropped. Another important concept is separation of duties, meaning monitoring infrastructure should be protected with strong access controls so that the same accounts that administer production systems do not also control monitoring data, because that reduces the chance that compromise of one set of credentials erases evidence. Beginners sometimes think monitoring is passive, but monitoring infrastructure is itself a critical system and must be defended. When monitoring is resilient and tamper-resistant, defenders can trust what they see during crises. That trust is essential for making containment decisions quickly and safely. A strong architecture also balances breadth and depth of visibility, because collecting every possible detail from every system can be costly and overwhelming, while collecting too little creates blind spots. Breadth means you have basic visibility across all systems, such as authentication logs, network flow records, and high-level system events. Depth means you have richer telemetry on high-value systems, such as detailed process activity on administrative endpoints, configuration change auditing on management platforms, and granular access logs on sensitive data repositories. The architecture should define which systems receive depth monitoring and why, and it should ensure that those systems are chosen based on risk and impact, not only on convenience. Beginners sometimes assume the best plan is to monitor everything the same way, but equal monitoring is not the same as effective monitoring. Effective monitoring aligns effort with risk and uses context to make signals actionable. This also helps with triage because high-value systems produce higher quality signals that are more likely to represent real threats. When depth is targeted, the monitoring system remains usable, and defenders can focus on the events most likely to matter. Cloud environments add special considerations because many critical actions happen through management interfaces and automation, and those actions can create or remove resources in seconds. Monitoring architecture in the cloud must therefore capture control plane activity, such as changes to identity permissions, network exposure settings, storage sharing policies, and key management rules. These actions can be more important than traditional host logs, because an attacker can cause major impact without touching a host at all. Another important cloud idea is ephemeral resources, meaning systems may exist for short periods. So monitoring must capture their activity quickly and attach it to stable identifiers like account IDs and project labels. Beginners may assume they can always investigate a host later, but in cloud environments the host may be gone by the time you notice something suspicious. This is why central collection and near real-time alerting matters so much. You want evidence captured even when resources are short-lived. Cloud monitoring also benefits from clear tagging standards so that events can be grouped by environment and owner. When cloud telemetry is designed with these realities in mind, triage becomes faster because you can see what changed, by whom, and what the change affected. Network visibility is a major part of fast triage because it helps answer where data might be flowing and whether an attacker is communicating with external destinations. Network telemetry can show unusual outbound connections, unexpected east-west movement between internal systems, and traffic spikes that suggest scanning or data transfer. However, network monitoring must be designed to avoid creating blind spots through encryption assumptions or segmentation gaps. Encrypted traffic protects confidentiality but can reduce content visibility, so the architecture often relies on metadata, such as who connected to whom, how much data moved, and how often connections occurred. This metadata can still be powerful when combined with identity and host signals, because unusual patterns stand out even without seeing content. Beginners sometimes assume you need full content inspection to detect threats, but in many cases, unusual connection patterns and timing are enough to prioritize investigation. Network visibility also supports containment because it can reveal which systems are communicating in suspicious ways, allowing targeted blocking or isolation. A good architecture ensures that network telemetry is collected across key boundaries, such as internet egress points, management zones, and sensitive internal segments. When network signals are complete and consistent, they become one of the fastest ways to scope incidents. Human workflows are part of monitoring architecture because detection and response rely on people interpreting signals, making decisions, and executing actions under pressure. If alerts are noisy, unclear, or lack context, responders waste time gathering basic facts and may make poor containment choices. A strong design, therefore, includes alert quality as a goal, meaning alerts should explain why they fired, what assets are involved, and what the likely next steps are. It also includes playbooks, which are established response patterns that guide actions without requiring responders to reinvent decisions every time. Even though the playbooks are not presented as lists here, but as part of the workflow mindset. Beginners sometimes assume monitoring is successful if it generates lots of alerts, but successful monitoring generates fewer, higher quality alerts that people can act on confidently. The architecture should also consider communication during incidents. ensuring responders can coordinate, record decisions, and avoid duplicating work. Monitoring systems should support investigation notes, case tracking, and evidence preservation so triage remains organized. When monitoring is designed around human use, it becomes faster and more reliable during real incidents. As we close, the central message is that infrastructure monitoring architecture is a security capability designed to support fast triage and containment, not merely a storage place for logs. It begins with selecting telemetry based on incident questions, ensuring identity, network, host, and cloud control plane signals are captured in consistent, correlated ways. It relies on normalization, time consistency, and asset context so responders can pivot quickly and prioritize correctly. It must be resilient and tamper-resistant so defenders can trust evidence under stress, and it must balance broad baseline visibility with deeper monitoring on high-value systems. It should connect detection to action by enabling targeted containment and by providing feedback signals that confirm whether containment worked. Finally, it must be designed for people, producing actionable alerts with enough context to reduce confusion and speed decisions. When you can rapidly answer what happened, where it happened, who was involved, how far it spread, and what safe containment steps exist, you have a monitoring architecture that actually supports security outcomes. That is what makes monitoring an architectural foundation rather than a collection of disconnected logs.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.